Hi guys, my name is Connor. I'm a science fiction, political, and philosophy nerd, a Marine Corps and law enforcement veteran, and a never Trump Republican, and I'm fighting the good fight in the alternative media, reacting to the cringiest, craziest, wildest, most schizo political content on the internet, because unfortunately in our day and age, online content affects real-world politics. Nick Fuentes, you probably don't need that much of an introduction if you've watched my channel, but he's a dissident right-wing Christian nationalist race realist who wants to, in my opinion, resegregate America, stop all immigration to the United States, and he wants the Trump admin to be more hardcore than they've already been. And so as a result, he has a rabid audience of tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of young men who think that he's right about everything. I happen to think that Nick the Knife Fuentes is wrong about a substantial amount of things, but I try to argue with his points of good faith. This dude does piss me off to no end, so if I freak out halfway through the video segment, my apologies to chat, but hopefully that's at minimum entertaining for you. Let us watch Nick the Knife Fuentes make me mad for your entertainment.
We'll start by talking about the security situation in the Middle East at large. Why are we in this predicament? If you're just tuning in, if you haven't seen all my coverage on Iran so far, I'll give you a very brief summary. The reason that we are so close to a war with Iran right now is because Israel has undertaken an 18-month sustained, comprehensive, thorough campaign to change their security posture against their chief adversary, Iran. And they have done this by waging, in detail, a systematic offensive against all of Iran's proxies in the region. And this has created a situation where Iran is uniquely weak right now. Iran is weaker than it has ever been.
Wait. As an American, isn't this based? I'm confused as to how this is not based.
Arguably in this century, they are vulnerable. And with the favorable Republican administration, with the favorable Republican Senate and House, with elements inside the government that are favorable to Israel, Israel sees this as the perfect opportunity to strike Iran, which happens to be their chief and only remaining adversary in the Middle East. They have neutralized everybody else. Take a look around. Libya, civil war. Sudan, civil war. Somalia, civil war. Egypt, Jordan, peace treaty. Yemen, civil war. Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates, peace treaty. Lebanon, at war with Israel. Syria, civil war that's resulted in a regime change. Iraq, American intervention resulted in regime change. Saudi Arabia on its way to a peace treaty. Every other country's been neutralized. Iran is the only one left.
Wow. That I would have to talk to him about this. I'm not trying to straw man the guy, but I just want to tell you what the implication of this. The implication is that Israel is 100% responsible for all of these conflicts, and I don't think that's the case at all. He would have to explain how this was all Israel before I can even get to it. I have to give you a geopolitical rant. I'm sorry, guys. I know some of you love my geopolitics rants, but some of you don't. So we're just going to have to do it. North African countries are a mixed bag of corruption and efficiency, where Egypt, for instance, is known for being corrupt, but they're also like the breadbasket of the ancient world. They have a lot of tourism. They have a semi-competent military, all that kind of stuff. And so they're a mix of competence and corruption. Libya, under Muammar Gaddafi, they bombed like a Scottish airline in the 1980s. They were under a dictatorship. And it's my understanding that they had a civil war within the past decade, and then they've effectively collapsed into a failed state, where there's at least two warring, maybe three warring factions within Libya. But this was kicked off by, I forget what they call it. It was like the Arab Awakening or something like that. I forget what it was. But it started in Tunisia, where a fruit vendor who didn't have proper permits from the local government got the shit kicked out of him by local cops, and then he got all of his food confiscated. So he was expecting to effectively like starve or be homeless and starve. And so he went down to the local police precinct and set himself on fire. And that started a pro-democracy wave in Tunisia and Libya, where first they protested, then they got shot by the government. Then once they got shot by the government, they became rebels, and then they ended up fighting the government. And that led to a healthy chunk of civil conflict where Tunisia, Libya, and even Egypt experienced government tumult at minimum and revolution at maximum. But I didn't hear a single fucking thing about Mossad psyoping hundreds of thousands of Tunisians and Libyans in order to be pissed off at their government. Not only did I not hear a single fucking thing, I don't think 5 Jews showing up with a briefcase filled with a few $1 million would be sufficient in order to create the revolutions in these countries. So I just think that's fucking cope. And when it comes to Saudi Arabia, Jordanian, and like UAE and Omani normalization of relationships with Israel, that was done during the Abraham Accords. That was done by Jared Kushner and the Trump admin. And the Iraqi civil war sparked off by the United States invasion wasn't advantageous to Israel. It was disadvantageous because effectively they went from a Sunni majority that had to fight a Shia majority, a Sunni minority that had to fight and stave off a Shia majority. Now they're Shia majority and the Shia are aligned with Iran. So that's disadvantageous to Israel. So like, I would want to engage with Nick in order to see what he actually thinks about each one of these geopolitical developments. But for him to simplify it into a single sentence and just say that the Jews did it, which he didn't say explicitly, but I feel like is inferential. That's a crazy fucking way to start your analysis. But, I paused 2 minutes in, so I want to give him more rope to potentially hang himself with.
And Israel sees this as their once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It won't happen again.
Bullshit. Sorry, he's just saying wrong things. Hold on. I have to try to contend with chat as well, just because I'm already behind on chat. Let me just read chat, but that's bullshit. They already assassinated nuclear doctors last decade. Just because you didn't hear about it doesn't mean it didn't happen. What the fuck are you talking about? They had that entire centrifuge operation. What the fuck are you talking about? Israeli centrifuge sabotage operation, Stuxnet. They hacked into, which was funny because I don't think they were hooked up to the internet. So they had guys on the inside that they paid off in order to hook into the centrifuges in order to destroy Iran's capacity for nuclear enrichment. This happened in 2010. Israeli magnet bomb assassination of nuclear scientist. Mossad was suspected of killing a high up nuclear scientist by driving alongside with a moped and using a bomb that they stuck to the driver's side and then drove away and ignited, and they blew him up. So, bro, like, you're just kind of making shit up. I'm sorry, I can't contend with chat. I have to contend with Nick. My apologies to chat.
That they get to carry out a strike. And so for this reason, Israel is desperate to take this opportunity. But they cannot decisively confront Iran without the help of the United States. The United States is not seeking a war with Iran. So Israel is trying to create a crisis in which the United States is forced to confront Iran on its behalf and will participate with Israel in a regime change war against Iran. Once again, backing up a little bit, this all starts on October 7th. What is the security situation on October 7th? Well, October 7th, 2023, this is 12 years after the United States is prepared to withdraw from Iraq. Barack Obama is elected in 2008, inaugurated in 2009. By 2011, he is ending the war in Iraq. The situation in 2011 is this. Iran, now that Saddam Hussein is defeated and the United States is leaving, Iran is building its influence inside Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
They're funneling weapons and money into Shiite militias because Iraq has a large Shiite population.
Okay.
And they're taking over the security of the state of Iraq from the United States, which is leaving.
Sure.
The United States was running security for Iraq. They're out. Iran comes in. In Syria, the Bashar al-Assad regime is loyal to Iran. Iran's Revolutionary Guard is inside Syria, and they're building bases there. They're using Syria and Iraq to transport weapons and officers and personnel and missiles into Lebanon, where Iran's major proxy Hezbollah resides in its capital Beirut and on Israel's border in the north.
Okay.
A couple years later, a civil war breaks out in Yemen, and a Shiite sect known as the Houthis take over the capital. They take over the west of the country, which is where all their major ports and cities are, and they engage Saudi Arabia in a major war. Iran is sending them missiles and weapons and personnel as well. And so from roughly 2011 to 2023, Iran is building its influence across the entire region. They're building up a network of proxies that they're arming and training and supporting through the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. And they're able to do this because of the many power vacuums that have been left by various American and Israeli interventions over the decades. So to put it succinctly,
again, I'm letting him go, and I'm okay letting him go. Descriptively, I haven't had like a massive problem with what he said so far, but U.S. and Israeli interventions, I think, is a mischaracterization. But that's okay. I mean, we can argue about the details in a moment. I think he has like a very unipolar view of the world that just doesn't work. But again, I want to hear what he says instead of just jumping down and being like, that's fake, that's cringe, that's fake, that's cringe, that's fake, that's cringe. I don't just want to do that. I want to, he's obviously setting up a line of argumentation, and he's using factually true things mixed in with things that are contentious in order to create a narrative. So I want to see what it is. I am going to read chat, though, because I do love and respect my chat. So I'm going to apologize to the VOD viewers because because chat's popping off a little bit. I'm going to be answering questions that aren't related to the content that's immediately in front of me. Cbum says, liberalism and conservatism are not mutually exclusive. I'd argue that a majority of Republicans agree with the tenets of liberalism. I know, and I think that we need to separate the liberal conservatives, like myself, actually, because I do believe in liberalism as a governing philosophy. I just think that it's not sufficient for guiding a culture. And then I also think that we should conserve the Constitution of the United States, which is inherently liberal in philosophy. So we need to separate the liberal conservatives from MAGA. Sen Patty says, laugh my ass off, you unlocked an old ass memory. My apologies. G Free says Friedman is never wrong. Yes, he is. I just found his Twitter. Based. All right. Friedrich Hayek says 90% chance that Connor couldn't name specific things he disagrees with Friedman off of the top of his head. Yeah. Yeah, Friedman. Milton Friedman. Oh, you're distracting me. You're distracting me from what we need to do. Yeah, like all his like absolute laissez-faire economist bullshit where he doesn't believe in like redistributive economics almost at all. You can say that's a straw man, but I've absolutely heard him argue against social programs because he talks about perverse incentives. So we'll do that another day. Just remind me to do that another day because I don't want to be doing an Iran Israel segment and they get totally distracted by economics. Whew. Morning, same name on UT, says BSG Black. Yep. We're under Counterpoints, or if you type in Counterpoints Politics, you should see a YouTube channel with around 6,000 subs. That's us. We're live right now on the Counterpoints channel. The rest of the week, I'm live on Valor Media Network, VALOR Media Common Spelling, Network Common Spelling. Monday through Friday, I'm live there, except for Tuesdays, I'm live on this channel. All right. Rugdub, $2 says, good points. Thanks for addressing it. Appreciate you, Rugdub. Audacity for $10 says, hey, cutie, I know you're busy with the review. If you need a content break in light of the Israel-Iran situation, can you play from YouTube Tonk Alalik Gulf War simply for the hype and vibes? I'm going to pull it up, but I'm not going to play it right now. Is that like a music video? That would be sweet. Tonk Alalik Gulf War. Yeah. All right, we'll take a look at that towards the end of the segment. All right. I'm gonna play this. I'm gonna scroll and find my next chat.
By 2023, you have Hezbollah in Lebanon on Israel's northern border. They are being supplied by Shiite militias and the Revolutionary Guard inside of Syria. Israel is also being attacked by Shiite militias inside Iraq. And Iran's proxy called the Houthis, or Ansar Allah in Yemen, are launching missiles at Israel from their south. Inside Gaza, Hamas operates, and Iran is the last remaining patron of Hamas. So you could say that Israel is surrounded by Iran's proxies. In the north, by Hezbollah and the Revolutionary Guard and the militias in Syria. In the east, by the militias in Iraq. And in the south, by Hamas and by the Houthis.
Okay.
This is part of Iran's security architecture. Iran fears, because they see the fate of every other Middle Eastern country. They saw what happened to Saddam Hussein. They saw what happened to Muammar Gaddafi. They saw what happened to Bashar al-Assad. They know that they're next. Okay. They know that Israel and the United States will eventually come for them. So they're pursuing a couple of strategies. The first is their proxy network. The proxy network is part of Iran's defenses. Why? Iran is far from Israel, but Hezbollah is close to Israel. The Houthis and Hamas and the militias in Iraq and Syria, they're close to Israel. The reason that Iran is trained up and built supply chains and logistics and armed up with missiles, all these proxy groups, is so that Iran can touch Israel. So that if Israel attacks Iran, maybe Iran doesn't survive, but its proxies do. And if its proxies have missiles, they can engage Israel in a second strike. So let's say Israel...
I'm okay with this analysis descriptively. I'm wondering where he's going to say that it's bad, though. Okay? Because, in my opinion, I'm going to give you some Zio-shill talking points. Despite Israel's horrors being committed in Gaza, where you got 2.2 million people who are effectively living in rubble, who are getting diseases related to living in tents for too long, that might, 65,000 dead, 20,000 of them are fighters, 200,000 people are expected to die as a result of like disease and malnutrition and all that kind of bullshit. So despite that horror, let's set that aside momentarily. Keep it in the back of your mind, but set it aside. Israel does grant civil rights and civil liberties to its people. It does have some level, not American level, but it does have some level of freedom of speech and freedom of conscience. It does have some level of integration with the West when it comes to trade, economics, all that kind of stuff. So it's an infinitely more willing ally than Iran. And then not just that, within the past 5 to 10 years, actually, weirdly enough, thanks to Jared Kushner and thanks to Trump, we've had a normalization of relations between all of the Gulf states and all of the Sunni states with Israel. So Israel is effectively getting a pass from the Sunni regimes that have previously sought its destruction. And so Iran is the last game in town as far as raw, hateful, pure anti-Israeli sentiment. And so they're funding and preparing for Israel to take out an authoritarian theocratic regime that is seeking nuclear weapons in Iran. And yet every 5 to 10 years, we have like massive pro-democracy protests in Iran that show that the people actually don't even like the theocratic regime that much and would prefer something that was more open and more democratic. So again, like, he's descriptively cooking, but what's going to be the end dish? I'm very curious. And then, sorry, real quick. Herkimer says, well, looks like Orange Diddy is going to hit Iran. Whoever voted for this guy, good job electing the most obvious scammer in history. Bruh. I'm all about like the neocon war establishment and all that kind of shit, but that doesn't mean that like, actually, I think it's really funny. I think it's really funny that Trump is betraying his principles for the 50th time. Karen Mosley says, Connor, my problem with you is that you're not free market enough. All right. Well, we'll figure that out. We'll figure out the perfect balance, okay? And then I'm just going to point out, I did link my PayPal if you guys want to throw a dono there. And then I'm going to read one more, and then I'm going to go back. Grassroots says, donate as a business, otherwise it taxes Connor. Sure. All right. Anyways.
The United States go for broke, they blow up everything in Iran. Well, within hours, the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the militias in Iraq and Syria are raining ballistic missiles, drones, and primitive munitions on top of Israel. And it's attacking their electrical grid. The proxy network is attacking maybe their nuclear facilities, population centers, air bases. Israel's not a big country. Iron Dome is good, but it's not perfect. Israel gets carpet bombed by these proxies and destroyed. It deters Israel from attacking Iran.
Except for there's a massive assumption here that these proxies are competent, which we've seen in the past 72 hours. They are not.
That's number one. Number two is that Iran has a civilian nuclear program. They can enrich uranium. They can refine plutonium. Their nuclear program is spread out in 5 different cities. And many of these facilities are fortified deep underground and inside mountains. They're very hard to get to. In some cases, they're hundreds of feet underground. So they're impenetrable by even the most explosive conventional ordnance that the United States carries in its arsenal. Iran knows that if they acquire a nuclear bomb, like the United States thought Saddam Hussein did in 2003, it will invite aggression from the United States. So what they do is they maintain a threshold status. They maintain the ability to enrich fissile material that they can use in a nuclear bomb, but they don't make weapons-grade material. They don't make the weapon. What they do is they make enriched uranium for a nuclear reactor, for one nuclear reactor. What they do is they have a space program. What it really is a missile program. A rocket is a rocket. A rocket ship for outer space is really a missile. So with their civilian nuclear program and their civilian space program, what they're in effect doing is creating a ready-made nuclear missile program. And the reason they've done this is so that if the United States and Israel carry out a strike on Iran, for one reason or another, Iran will have the infrastructure and the know-how and the scientists and the personnel to then build a nuclear bomb, which is the ultimate deterrent. If Iran has 10 or 20 nuclear bombs, if they can miniaturize them and put them on missiles or inside of submarines, which Iran has, then they have a credible nuclear deterrent. They become as untouchable as North Korea.
Okay, I'm 100% okay with this. And then what you have is a nuclear detente because Israel has a nuke, Iran has a nuke, and then the Saudis 100% would want a nuke, and then we're in a nuclear detente. So what I'm curious about is he doesn't want to be involved in this shit, but where is he morally indicting Israel? Is he just morally indicting Israel because they do intel operations and assassination operations in the region? Is it because they involve the United States military industrial complex apparatus? What is the moral gripe? Because if I was Israel and my enemies who say they're my enemies, who say they want to burn my country to the ground, who say that they're going to nuke vast swaths of Israel, are attempting to obtain a bomb, I probably just do what Israel just did. So I'm very curious about where he's going to go with this. McFadden says, I see about the VA. How did a customer come back to my register in the 2010s with a bloody black thumb wrapped in duct tape, and he said the VA would just wash it and put a sock on it and tell you to take Motrin? Yes.
So this is really all about security This is all about grand strategy. They have a vast network of proxies. They have a large conventional missile arsenal, which they supply to their proxies and maintain for themselves. And they have a latent nuclear weapons program. They have all of this to protect themselves from Israel. And it's really a no-brainer why they've done this. These were three things that Saddam Hussein did not have. These are three things that Bashar al-Assad did not have. These are three things that Muammar Gaddafi did not have. And because those dictators, because those countries did not have a network of proxies, a large arsenal of conventional missiles and drones, because they did not have a nuclear program, they were vulnerable to regime change, to intervention, airstrikes from Israel, ground wars from the United States. One by one, they have fallen over the decades. Israel and the United States have attacked almost all of Israel's neighbors over the years. And so what Iran has done, one way to look at it from the Israeli perspective is they have plans of world domination. They're building a caliphate. They're run by crazy mullahs. They're run by crazy Muslim clerics who chant death to America and death to Israel. They've devised an evil plan to take over the world, to kill the infidels. That's one way to look at it. The other way to
I was wondering why he was being sarcastic about that, because I'm pretty sure that we can just go to Ayatollah Khamenei or any who was that guy that was in power up until very recently? Current Iranian president Masoud Pezeshkian. Masoud Pezeshkian. But wasn't there that Ahmadinejad guy? Ahmadinejad, Iran. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. Can't I find like a billion speeches of this guy basically saying like, yeah, fuck Israel. We're going to bomb the shit out of them. We're going to kill them all. Couldn't I find the same things from Ayatollah Khamenei? And then is Khamenei dead at this point? I know he was old as hell, even like 10 years ago. Is Ayatollah Khamenei still alive? Sorry, I didn't want that. I want this. So died in 1989. Who was his successor, though? Because I swear to God, there was a successor. Who is the current head, current Ayatollah of Iran? Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Dude, that's not my fault, man. That's not my fault. This dude is Ruhollah Khomeini, and his successor is Ali Khamenei. That's like some Luigi Waluigi shit. So don't fucking blame me for that. That's not my fault. All right. But the point is, can I find current Iranian representatives saying that they hate the United States? United States is the great Satan. We need to be repulsed out of the Middle East and North Africa. We support Israel. Israel is a bunch of demons. The world won't know peace until they burn Israel. Can I find current quotes? And my answer is 99% yes. So I don't know why Nick was talking about that sarcastically. But again, I'm trying to let him cook.
To look at it is that Israel launched a surprise attack on its neighbors in 1967. Israel invaded Lebanon twice, in 1978 and 1981.
Out of nowhere, Israel just did that. Okay.
Israel bombed Iraq in 1981. The United States went to war in Iraq in 1990. The United States went to
Why? Why did we do that?
war against Iraq in 2003, against Libya in 2011, intervene in Syria in 2015, in Yemen throughout the last decade.
There's some whys missing here, but okay.
The way to look at it is Iran is watching this story. Iran is watching one country after another falling to civil war, regime change, Israeli airstrikes, or a joint military occupation. And Iran doesn't want to meet the same fate. Iran,
which is rational.
notices the pattern, which is every country that opposes Israel and Washington gets destroyed. And in particular, their leaders get murdered.
Yep.
Are the mullahs crazy? Or
No, they're not. But hold on. That's neither here nor there. I'm going to let Nick cook, but I'm going to take a little bit of a break because we're effectively just listening to him yap and do like a descriptive setup for the geopolitical situation in the Middle East and North Africa. I'd say like 70 to 80% of it I agree with descriptively. I feel like there's some like lies of omission, but that's okay. That's already better than most pundits. Most pundits just give you the pre-cooked narrative up front. There's some negative inferences that I'm taking as well against Israel and against the United States, but I would understand how an Iranian would perceive it that way. So I understand what he's saying, but I just want to take a break and address chat, right? So Wowman says, the masculine urge to want cooler military hardware as it inspires awe and terror at the same time. Yes. Scrolling, LB says, at Counterpoints, relax. Destiny reads past the headlines. You're far from a clone. Oh, fuck you, LB. So for those of you who aren't paying attention, what LB is saying is Destiny will actually pick the article, read AOC's platform, and all that kind of shit, and dig in. And no offense, go on really boring reading tirades. However, guess what? I have 150 viewers. Steven has 10,000 with which to bore. So if he drops down to 7,000 or 8,000, he's still making hella AdSense. He's still getting super chats out the ass. He's still getting hella donos out the ass. I don't have the time to sit here and read entire fucking articles. I would lose 30% of my fucking chat easily. And every little bit counts when you're small. So LB, well played, very funny. Fuck you. Grassroots says, not going to lie, AOC could tell me to burn my own house down and I'd give it strong consideration. All right, she's a good-looking gal. We get it. We get it. Silver Jacket Man says, Connor, I didn't talk until I was 8. My parents were worried until at 8. I told my mother my soup was too cold at lunch. My parents asked why I hadn't spoken before. I replied, until now, everything has been satisfactory. I don't know if that's a movie reference, but that is fucking crazy. Oh, man. Vosh fan says, it's okay, Connor. I still heart you. I'm going to change my name to Connor fan. Good, good. We need some schizo rightoids to keep us on our feet. The Weird World of Guy says, hey, are we going to be listening to Bomb Iran by Vince Vance and the Valiants? Yeah, soon. Soon. We'll listen to that along with our tank Lelek Gulf War Air War animation. All right. Yeah. Tim just reads super chats only. What a lucky man. Vosh fan says Connor firing shots at Xander Hall. Rude. Gen X says, please, Connor, has ad and chat distracts him like crazy. He wants to engage. Yeah. I like engaging with chat. You guys are funny as fuck. I try to get through the content in a reasonable amount of time, but I will double or triple the runtime. 1, by going on my own rants, and then 2, by engaging with chat. Mega Zero says, random Warhammer gaming setup. Would you go over how to set up game matches up in a video format? Yeah, 100%. I want to do like a lore channel as well. I just don't have time. G Free says, Sherry is a woman child. Destiny might actually be a groomer for that reason alone. Yeah, you can call his hookups like R-slurred or whatever, but that's on you, not on me. They're technically adult women. Sen Patty says, my dad does suck, but that's on him, to be fair. Okay. All right. That was enough of a pause. Back to the content.
do they not want to get murdered? Is it crazy to not want to get murdered? You know, Muammar Gaddafi was a crazy Muslim until they shoved a metal rod up his butt when they killed him in the streets of Libya.
Okay, this is what's fucking pissing me off. Lockerbie bombing. Okay, because I feel like he's just minimizing and lies of omission this shit. So on December 21, 1988, Pan Am Flight 103 took off from Heathrow Airport in London bound for New York. Among the 259 passengers were 190 Americans. They never made it home. Less than 40 minutes into the flight, the plane exploded over Lockerbie, Scotland, killing everyone on board and the 11 Scots on the ground. Until 9/11, it was one of the worst, most lethal acts of terrorism and one of the largest and most complex attacks of international terrorism ever investigated. Solving the case required unprecedented international cooperation. The explosion at 30,000 feet rained debris over 845 square miles, creating the largest ever crime scene. More than 5,000 responders, including investigators from the FBI and Scottish authorities, combed the countryside. They recovered 319 tons of wreckage. So, in 1991, the British and American governments charged Abd al-Bassat Ali al-Maghari and Laman Khalifa Fima in the case. Their trial in 2000 was held in Scottish court, built for the occasion on a former U.S. military base in the Netherlands. The court acquitted Fima and convicted al-Maghrahi in 2001, sentencing him to life in prison. He was released in 2009. Why would you release this guy? Fucking shoot him in the back of the head. What's your problem? When he was believed near death from cancer, but he survived almost 3 years. The Libyan government formally accepted responsibility for the bombing and agreed to pay nearly $3 billion to the victims' families. Since the bombing, victims' families have continued to push to advance the investigation, believing the plot and its execution were not limited to these two characters. Agent in the Washington field office made repeated trips to countries with a nexus to the plot, and in private briefings, FBI officials steadfastly assured victims' families the investigation was robust and ongoing. On December 21st, 2020, 32 years to the day after the bombing, federal officials charged a third person, Abdu Abdallah Masoud Khair al-Marimi, in the case. Who gives a shit? But this is something that Muammar Gaddafi fucking greenlit. He greenlit blowing up 300 people who had nothing fucking to do with what was going on in order to kill these motherfuckers. So fuck him. You think I feel bad about Muammar Gaddafi getting stabbed in the fucking ass? That's after running his country into a fucking shithole for 2 decades? I fucking don't. Fuck Muammar Gaddafi. I hope he's in fucking hell getting stabbed in the ass again. So Nick Fuentes saying like, oh, what was Muammar Gaddafi's crime? What was the Libyan government's crime? I don't know. Actively sponsoring and participating in fucking terrorism where they mass slaughtered hundreds of people? Fuck them. What's your response to that, Nick? I'd love to hear it.
Saddam Hussein was a crazy Muslim until they hanged him in his country.
Yeah, no shit. I can't believe I have to explain this. Saddam Hussein, oh my God, what a fucking loser piece of shit. Dude, fuck Nick. This is why he pisses me off so bad. This area of Iraq, please look at your screens, is predominantly Shia and has 70% of the population. This area of Iraq is predominantly Sunni and has like 30% of the fucking population. This area of Iraq are the Kurds, and they're fucking, I don't know how much of the fucking ethnicity, right? But Saddam Hussein was Sunni, okay? And he had an alliance with the Syrian Ba'athist Party. He took over Iraq, killed his political rivals, and then repressed and oppressed the Shia for decades, and repressed and oppressed the fucking Kurds for decades. When Iran fell due to the revolution in 1979, he invaded Iran in order to claim their oil fields. He started losing the war. So the United States didn't want Iran to be on Saudi Arabia's doorstep because that's 2/3 of the world's proven oil supply. And so as a result, we gave him weapons of mass destruction. But not only did Saddam rain VX gas, botulism, and anthrax into Iranian soldier lines, he also used them against the Kurds, also used them against the Shiite population, and also launched rockets into Israel. So we decided that he was a psychotic piece of shit. And then when he invaded and took over Kuwait, we kicked his ass out of fucking Kuwait. And then a decade later, we deposed him. You can say that the ensuing civil war was so fucked up that it would have been better to leave him in power. I think that can be debated back and forth. However, pretending that just because Saddam had a rational fear of getting taken out, Saddam was one of the biggest, most evil pieces of shit of the past 100 years. What the fuck are you talking about, man? Everything that I just said can be verified. And no, the United States doesn't automatically become the good guys. That's not what the fuck I'm saying. What I am saying is just because we do bad shit and Israel does bad shit doesn't suddenly make our enemies good people. What the fuck is this logic?
Assad was a crazy Muslim, a war criminal. Now he's in Russia hiding somewhere. Okay.
Yeah, and what did Assad do? Assad indiscriminately fucking barrel bombed his own people. It was alleged that he kidnapped his own citizens who were pro-democracy protesters and tortured them until they fucking died in fucking dungeons. I don't even have to go for the torture. Assad had cities that had fallen to the rebels, and instead of fighting them in a conventional war, he just rained 55-gallon trash drums filled with explosives down on his own civilian population. He fucking engaged in attrition warfare against his own citizens. I'm supposed to feel bad for this guy? Nick, what the fuck is your problem?
They were all crazy Muslims who were doing these things for no reason.
Nobody said no reason. We said bad reasons.
Until they're getting like decapitated in the street by angry mobs.
Which they deserved, and those angry mobs didn't come out of nowhere. They weren't Mossad intel operations, you fucking asshole.
Is Iran run by insane clerics, or is it run by very rational state actors who are surveying the landscape and responding to their adversaries?
Dude, if this was before the Iraq war or during the Iraq war, he'd be saying the same shit about Saddam Hussein. He's already saying this about Bashir al-Assad, which happened in the past decade. He's already saying this about Muammar Gaddafi that happened in the past decade. I can't tell if he's fucking lying or delusional. I have no idea what the fuck is going on in Nick's head.
Series, which are Tel Aviv and Washington. It's pretty obvious. Anyway, so this is a security situation.
General Ballsack says, have a good day, folks, off to work. Thank you, General Ballsack. I don't know if you'll see this as a VOD, but, you know, thank you for hanging out in chat. I appreciate you. Quick shill time. Like the stream if you haven't liked it. It's free. Super chats are not required, but they are appreciated. I'm trying to think of what else, but I'm so discombobulated and furious. I frankly, I don't even think I can show properly. Nick is pissing me the fuck off, as usual.
In 2023. This is why I say this was all predictable. Because what Israel said after October 7th is we're going to change the security situation that has prevailed for the last 50 years. This is what they're referring to. What's the security situation of the last 50 years? What happened 50 years before 2023? The Yom Kippur War, which was a direct response to the Six-Day War. When they say we're going to overturn the order of the past 50 years, they're saying we're going back to the borders from 67. They're saying we want the Sinai. They're saying we want the Golan. They're saying we want Gaza and the West Bank. When they said we want to reset the clock 50 years, we want to change the strategic position, they said we want to dominate the entire Middle East. We want to take out our chief adversary, Iran, and roll back all its influence. That's what they said. That's what they meant.
Okay. Bosch fan says, then Shu lost her shit. You mean got married in a monogamous relationship and had a baby instead of becoming an old childless roasty? No, Bosch fan, I don't care about people getting married and having children. In fact, I encourage it. When I say lost her shit is that she has a fucking Nick Fuentes level fucking analysis of the CIA and USAID that was super fucking cringe. If you want to watch me criticize Shu's geopolitical analysis, there should be a video in my VOD section on Counterpoints.
And like I said, they pursued for the last year and a half a systematic rollback of Iran's influence, starting with Hamas. They blockaded the Gaza Strip, then they bombed it, then they invaded it. They occupied its major cities and cleared them out. Then they left Gaza. Then they sent all their troops north to Lebanon, and they confronted Hezbollah. They bombed Hezbollah thousands of times. They sent...
Problem? Deus Alcyon says, thoughts on Andromeda. I haven't watched it enough to have an opinion.
In those pagers, which had explosive devices, and they launched waves of those attacks. There were 3, actually.
Problem?
Pagers and radios and other devices were blown up simultaneously. And then they invaded southern Lebanon and occupied it. They neutralized Hezbollah. That was in October of last year.
Problem?
Then in December in 2020,
J Afro J for £2 says Emperor protects. Thank you, King. Thank you for the donation.
24, they overthrew the government of Bashar al-Assad. They overthrew Assad. A new government came to power, which...
I need to use the restroom, but I'm going to let the content play, and I'm actually going to watch it myself so I don't miss anything. So I need to set it up real quick. Counterpoints, politics, live. Come on, buddy. Where you at? Live. All right. So I'm gonna click on this, and I'm gonna go use the restroom. I'll be back as quickly as I possibly can, but I'm actually gonna listen to Nick and formulate my thoughts because I don't want to miss anything. Because again, so if you're wondering where I'm at is I think Nick gave a descriptively accurate claim for the geopolitics of the Middle East and North Africa setting up the current conflict. I think that he articulated why Iran could have a rational fear for being deposed by Israel and the United States. I'm okay with all of that. But then he just says that like Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi and Bashir al-Assad, they're all just like these like normal, rational Muslims who actually don't have anything really wrong with them except for that they fear being taken out by Israel and the United States, completely ignoring all the fucked up shit that they genuinely did, which just feels this like this wildly contrarian and stupid analysis of history. And then now he's continuing through with the like Iran through line where he's like, well, is it really irrational for them to just defend themselves? And look at all the crazy aggression that Israel is doing. And I'm just wondering to myself, it's like, let's say that if we had Mexico on the southern border and there was a militia in Mexico that wanted to reclaim the United States of America back to the 1830 border, and we saw them getting AK-47s together, getting RPGs together, getting all that kind of shit together, and they were effectively preparing for an invasion, and then we seed their organization with Intel communicative devices that not only allow us to see the hierarchy of their organization, but then it allows us to maim and kill their entire structure. Would we give a shit? And I think the answer is obviously not. So I'm really trying to understand Nick Fuentes' like moral analysis, and I'm just not getting it. So I'm going to let him play. I'm going to use the restroom. I'll be right back.
Which is friendly. And after they overthrew Assad, Israel bombed all of Syria's air defenses, air force, its navy, all of its major military bases, rendering it completely vulnerable. And over the past several years, they've waged a campaign with the United States against the Houthis in Yemen. Piece by piece, first Hamas in Gaza, then Hezbollah in Lebanon in the north, then Assad and the Revolutionary Guard, which was expelled, and Assad's military destroyed in Syria, the Houthis in Yemen. Now that all of Iran's proxies are rolled back, one of their major deterrents against Israel is neutralized. If Israel attacks Iran, first of all, they're able to send their planes through Syrian airspace because they destroyed Syria's military. But if they carry out a strike on Iran, Iran's proxies can't respond on its behalf. That gets to the nuclear program. This is why the nuclear program is at the center. And so since Trump got into office, suddenly the nuclear program has become a really big problem. The JCPOA, the original Iran deal, went into effect in 2015. And it was signed onto by Russia, China, the US, Germany, France, the United Kingdom. And it created a framework where Iran would have a civilian peaceful nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. By the way, that's what we're trying to achieve right now. Suddenly,
that doesn't that make Trump kind of a dumbass for blowing up the original deal? I've been listening. I understand it descriptively. I haven't really found anything that I want to indict Israel on. If you want to say that Iran is engaged in realpolitik, then I would just say the same thing about Israel. And then if Trump blew up the Iran nuclear deal and now he's trying to reconstitute it because Trump is a fucking moron. Problem? What's the problem, bro? What's the problem? That's what I'm trying to get at. That's what I'm trying to sink my teeth into. I am going to read chat, though, just because I love you guys and I want to pay attention to you, unlike your fathers. Sacred Snow says, although I did see Silver Jacket Man has a good dad. Good for you, Silver Jacket Man. Sacred Snow says, are you into Stalker? I'm not. I'm into the aesthetics, but truth be told, I'm more into action than I am into action horror. I don't like being hunted. I don't. It makes me uncomfortable. Mega Milky Alert says, thoughts on Israel versus Iran? Well, we're kind of getting to that, where I think that Israel, in my opinion, is going too far with the Gazan campaign, and they might be going too far with the Iranian air campaign. But I understand from their perspective, their realpolitik concerns that the United States and the Western world wants them to restrain themselves effectively while their enemies get into a strong position. And when they beat the fuck out of their enemies, who have obviously stated repeatedly that they want to wipe Israel off the face of the map, they're like, fuck you, we're not going to play fair. Right? So, yeah, man. Like I get why I disagree with Israel, because I don't want to lose the entire world in nuclear holocaust just so Israel can defend itself from Iran. But I also understand Israel's position, which is if we let Iran get a bomb, then effectively we're in a nuclear détente where the world is more likely to go up in hellfire. So I don't really know. I don't really know the solution. I kind of got more problems. I think I need to study it more. It was justified. Hashtag Teagate. True. Never forget Teagate. Fuck, man. Yeah, that was a painful way to start the day. Grassroots says, think of all the unsatisfied catboy women, Connor. Where? Catboy women? Dude, that just sounds like... Thank you for the $10, by the way. But that just sounds like people in Discord drawing catboy girls, like cat femboys. That's what that sounds to me. Oh, and then Grassroots gets it. God, I hate you guys. Oh, Fuentes Catboys, because he loved all the Catboys in his chat, because there's this weird tolerance amongst groypers about sexual degeneracy in trans women, despite the fact that they vilify them constantly. I did forget that. I did forget Catboy Cammy. I still don't know whether or not they had sexual relations or if they just shared the love of Adolf Hitler documentaries. Justin says, Connor, you misrepresent Nick. He does not want forced segregation like we have forced integration. You have to watch the show. Well, dude, I'm trying to. I'm watching the show as often as possible. But when you talk about race realism and how the races can't get together, the logical implication of that is segregation. J Afro J says, I'm guessing there's apprehension to join the Iranian conflicts as seen only for Israel's benefit. Well, not just that, but it actually does if Iran has a functional nuclear program, which I don't know what they have and what they don't have. But if they have a functional nuclear program and you try to do all the deep strikes against their like mountain fortresses, then they might not just let the missiles sit in the silos. They might say, well, it's use it or lose it time. And they might choose to use it, at which point Tel Aviv does become a burnt out parking lot, which is crazy. I don't want that. I don't think you want that either. John says, I want them to make more 40K books into TV shows. Yep, they're working on it. Henry Cavill's still working on it. Mega Milky Arc says, please don't ever talk to that loser. Who? Nick? I'll talk to Nick. I'll talk to whoever the fuck I want. I appreciate the sentiment, but I will talk to whoever I want. Wowman542 says, hourly reminder to like the stream. Yes, please like the stream. Please super chat if you got it. Grassroots did a crazy super chat, $100. Thank you kindly. Apparition says Arab Spring. Yeah, I mixed that up with the Sunni Awakening. So if I said the Arab Awakening, then my apologies. It was the Sunni Awakening and the Arab Spring. Grassroots for 100. Thank you, King. You want to get used to seeing dead Jews, you better get used to fighting Jews? No shit. That's the other thing, too. It's like, if you want to fucking talk all this shit about Israelis, you better be ready to fucking fight them. You know what I'm saying? All right. Justin says, lol, you think a guy who self-immolated resulted in a pro-democratic wave for the country? Laugh my ass off. Why wouldn't that be true? Do you think a bunch of Jews were just running around, handing out $20 bills? I'll pull it up. You know, fuck you, Justin, for laughing. Tunisian man sets himself on fire. This was the kickoff for Arab Awakening, whatever the fuck was. On 17 December 2010 in Sidi Bouzid, Tunisia, an act which became a catalyst for the Tunisian revolution and the wider Arab Spring against autocratic regimes. His self-immolation was in response to the confiscation of his wares and the harassment and humiliation inflicted on him by municipal authorities and their aides. You can say that it's like the corrupt government that allowed shit to get so out of control that this allowed the revolution to take place. But if you think that this wasn't a bigger spark for the Arab Spring compared to a bunch of Jews running around with money to pay protesters $20 per day that they protest, I think you're schizophrenic. No offense. Some offense intended. Clinton's killed Gaddafi, and Gaddafi was a fucking asshole. Do I give a shit? I don't think I give a shit. I give a shit about Libyan collapse. That's what I give a shit about. I don't give a shit about Libya being dead. Mega Milky Alert says, bro, what do you expect? It's not real analysis. Fuentes is a propagandist, not an analyst. Well, yeah, but I mean, there's still meat on this bone. Christian Blair says, Nick doesn't actually have a lot of credible analysis. He goes off on right-wing vibes. He was blown the fuck out regarding history in the Middle East and Israel. Interesting. Stuxnet was next level. It was. Justin says, I would love for you to talk to Nick, but he will tell you that you need more clout. Okay. Sounds like a fucking bitch-made pussy move to me, but whatever. Sounds good to me. Fucking Nick Fuentes over here, toxic, can't get a single person to show up onto his show. None of the right wing will fuck with him, except for the schizos. And then the entire left wing won't fuck with him. I should be easy, dude. Random liberal conservative soy boy loser. I should be easy to dunk on. Anyways, Thraxamundar says, these things are true, but his last bit is always nonsense narrative based on his hate for Jews. Funny thing is, all these Iran proxies got jacked in the last 3 years. Well, he did get there descriptively. I'll move on in a second, but he did get there descriptively. Vlad said, no, the major reason we don't put boots on the ground is because anti-Semitism would increase. All right. Anyways, let's let Nick continue to yap. It is interesting, guys. Like I get it. It's dry geopolitical analysis mixed with his own narrativization. I actually find this infinitely more intellectually stimulating than watching like a Piers Morgan panel. I do like watching a Piers Morgan panel for like the shit fights and the dunks and all that kind of stuff. But realistically, seeing like a schizo ideologue articulate his worldview in explicit detail is actually pretty interesting to me. I hope it's interesting to you as well.
Iran's nuclear program is a big problem. And the Trump administration says, if Iran does not come to the table and give up their nuclear program, we're going to go to war with them to get rid of their nuclear program for them. It's worth pointing out that Iran is not pursuing a nuclear bomb. They don't have one. They've never tested a nuclear device. And they have no intention of acquiring one, at least not yet. There has been no government directive. They're not pursuing one currently.
Yeah, but the whole point that Nick already conceded to earlier is the fact that they're trying to develop the fissile material and a space program. So all they have to do is take two civilian programs and combine them, and it becomes an intercontinental ballistic missile program almost overnight. So Nick can say this, that there's no directives in order to combine the civilian programs, but you don't think they're not able to say that shit? You don't think they don't have what is it? What was that fucking app that we did all our secret shit on? It's not WhatsApp. Come on, guys, help me out. It's the fucking Snapchat for government people. Signal? You think Iran doesn't have a fucking Signal chat where they're talking about how they're going to take two civilian programs and combine them into a nuclear weapons program? I mean, come on, man. Come on, man.
There's no intelligence that says that they're doing such a thing.
Whatever 4690 says, I do not believe Israel had nothing to do with all of its enemies' downfall. Whatever 4690, you can believe that they had a partial role in it, but I need you to understand something. Whatever 4690, I need you to look me in my fucking eyeballs so you understand something. You need to look at me. I'm gonna look you right in your fucking eyeballs, bro. The CIA and Mossad is 6 assholes with suitcases filled with money. So what they do is they go to foreign countries where they have an interest. Let's say that there's some West African city, some West African country, and they have tomato paste. I don't fucking know, right? Burkina Faso, we're very interested in their tomato paste. And let's say that that government doesn't want to sell us tomato paste, but a rebel group does. We give money to the rebel group and we say, hey, if you fight the government forces, if you get power, you're willing to sell us tomato paste? will back your rebellion. That's what the United States does. But the only way that 6 guys with a few $1 million can fuck up your country is if your country is already well and truly fucked. The Russians and the Chinese probably come to the United States all the time with suitcases of cash. Weirdly enough, our lobbyists just take the cash and say, thank you. I'll advocate for your position on Capitol Hill. That's a weird part of our culture, but whatever. And then the people who do it, there are plenty of people who say no. They say, I don't want to go to jail or prison for the rest of my fucking life, and I have a good job, and I have a wife and kids. Therefore, I'm not taking your cash, and I'm not betraying your country, or my country, right? Because America is not as fucked up as West Africa is, right? So 6 dudes with briefcases can't collapse the American government. And then even the people who try to damage the American government by selling our secrets or betraying our interests or all that kind of stuff, they can't do that much damage because there's so many other people loyal to the system around them that they're not capable of deposing an entire society with 6 guys with a few $1 million. Okay? So you are just an example. But there are people out there who think that the Mossad in Israel with a few $1 million and 6 intel analysts can collapse the entire world. But that's not how it happens. The world is already fucked up and they're playing the game to the best advantage that they can for their national interest. But there are dozens or hundreds of other players in the game of power. I hope you understand that. I hope whoever watches this VOD understands that.
The United States is demanding they stop their nuclear weapons program. They don't have one. They have a nuclear
Friendly Bumbly says, W. Nick, good morning. Good morning to you, Friendly Bumbly.
Energy program. They happen to be the only country with nuclear energy, but without nuclear weapons, that is enriching uranium to 60%. But technically, they are not pursuing a nuclear bomb.
All right, hold up. Last Stand 456 says, am I liberally conservative? I'm Catholic and culturally conservative, but I'm progressive in terms of how accepting we should be of, yeah. As a matter of fact, if we want to make that the new label, like libcons, people who want to preserve a liberal order and who are tolerant of other people, but ultimately they're moderately conservative in their political views and social views and fiscal views and all that kind of stuff, I'm perfectly okay with libcon as a label. As a matter of fact, that weirdly enough, that's kind of what neocons are. So yeah, if you want to change neocon to libcon, and that's what we call ourselves, the Grill Hottists are a combination of liberals, conservatives, conservatarians, and liberal conservatives. I think that's the perfect alliance. I think we'd be fucking cooking right there.
And yet the United States is telling them if they don't give up their nuclear program, we're going to destroy them. Why is this the case all of a sudden?
It's not. We've been talking about this for 20 fucking years, Nick. This dude gives me heartburn. He always appeals to this like fucking conspiracy bullshit over and over and over again. Weirdly enough, one of our very first episodes was breaking down Counterpoints' video about conspiracy. And this is what he does. Appeal to anomaly, appeal to anomaly, appeal to anomaly, appeal to anomaly, and then let me propose a narrative to you. But these anomalies are not anomalies. These are things that are all researchable. His audience just doesn't do any fucking research.
The reason that Israel and the United States...
We've been talking about the Iranian nuclear arms program since I was a fucking kid.
States are making such a big stink about Iran's nuclear program is very simple.
Because they're close to actually having it, and they're the last man standing.
Iran's nuclear program is the only remaining deterrent against U.S. and Israeli action.
Based?
If their proxies are gone, their nuclear program, and to some extent their missiles, is the only thing that is protecting them from an all-out regime change war. Israel is saying, we're going to bomb their nukes, then we're going to take them out.
Israel doesn't have the logistical capacity to take them out, and there's no appetite on the American public to do Iraq War 2.0. any revolution, any regime change that happens in Iran would come from revolutionaries or pro-democracy protesters within Iran itself.
That's why the United States is coming in and saying, give up your nukes and eliminate the pretext for Israel to attack you. The United States doesn't necessarily want regime change in Iran.
True. Okay. He's cooking. Okay.
But they don't want Iran to acquire a nuclear bomb. Iran isn't pursuing one.
Bullshit. But okay. You almost had me, but then you just had to throw out some bullshit. Okay. Keep going.
Israel wants regime change in Iran. And
America wants regime change in Iran, but we don't want the blood and treasure associated with regime change in Iran.
they recognize that the nuclear program is an impediment to regime change. That's why Israel is saying they will bomb Iran's nuclear program. But if Israel bombs Iran's nuclear program, Iran will acquire a nuclear bomb or attempt to. That is what is bringing the United States into the middle of this.
Okay.
When Trump got elected, he preferred to make a deal with Iran.
Yep.
And Trump announced in April, in a meeting with Bibi Netanyahu, actually, Trump announced in April that he was going to engage Iran in diplomacy, but that they had a 60-day deadline to come to a short-term deal with the United States to get rid of their capability to enrich uranium in exchange for sanctions relief.
Okay.
60 days, they said. The effort was led by Steve Witkoff. Ever since Trump announced the effort, Israel has been trying to sabotage the talks. The day that Trump announced the negotiations, Netanyahu went on a press conference and said, the only acceptable deal is if Iran's nuclear program is blown up. Then he said that Iran has to embrace the Libya model. What happened to Libya is that they gave up their nuclear program, then the United States destroyed their country.
Okay, I'm tracking the Realpolitik analysis. I'm tracking it. I see what you're saying. So if in Nick's assessment, the Israelis are negotiating in bad faith because the options to Iran, sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, Iran is how he's pronouncing it. I have no idea how to pronounce it. But the options are develop a nuke. That way you have some level of deterrent so you don't lose your government to Israeli and American manipulations. That's option one. Option two is just don't develop the bomb and then pray that Israeli and American manipulations are insufficient in order to cause a revolution that causes a regime change. But do you know what would also, I'm going to go full screen for this. Do you know what would also prevent regime change in Iran? Governing with the consent of the governed. That would also prevent regime change. If you had some level of democratic input where the people who were dissatisfied with their social services, their infrastructure, their technological development, their cultural development, their educational development, were able to choose the leaders amongst them who were able to lead the the Republic of Iran into the future in order to make society progressively better, then what would happen is the democratic, pro-revolutionary sentiment would be appeased by gaining the consent of the governed. That is another option constantly open to the Iranian regime. And yet, I don't think that Nick's going to advocate for that, because he doesn't believe in ruling with the consent of the governed. He believes in, Christian theocracy. So in some ways, him simping for the Iranian regime, he's simping for them because they have the governmental model that he wishes to instantiate in his ideal world. Believe it or not, Nick and I had a conversation where we talked about his ideal world, and he basically said that it was turning the West into a Christian imperium. That was his ideal world a few years ago. I find that interesting. I'm going to read a few more chats, though. Houthis get bombed for messing with shipping. Hamas gets destroyed in both Gaza and Lebanon. Hezbollah got pager bombed. All this while Russia is so busy with a war they can't keep Assad in power. Yeah, am I supposed to cry about this? He keeps describing cool things, but his tone tells me I should be sad. Fun Dark says, exactly where does all this nuance go wrong? Laugh my ass off. Well, in my opinion, it goes wrong when it starts saying like, well, the Iranians are just acting in their self-interest and no, we should never depose them. That's where it goes wrong for me. I'm confused. Where's the issue? Yeah. Problem? Question mark? Problem? Justin says it's because Israel is using America to become a superpower uncontested in the Middle East. That's the issue. Israel wants to eliminate its competitors using the US. Problem? Problem? Is there a problem with the Middle East and North Africa becoming more representative, more democratic, more attuned to the needs of its people? Is there a problem with them joining the international league of people who participate in mixed economy capitalism, who see to the betterment of their own populations? Is there a problem with them getting like more educated and more access to Western style technology? Like if you're a theocrat, I could see why you would hate this, because effectively that means that your veiled daughters get to watch Sabrina Carpenter fucking music videos where her butt cheeks are hanging out. Let me just Google Sabrina Carpenter real quick. I could understand how if you were like a Muslim conservative, you would be frustrated that your daughters are going to get exposed to this Western style degeneracy. Safe search must be on, because there's a music video that she released recently where she's wearing like denim and you can see a full half of her butt cheeks. She has, I think she's like a good looking girl or whatever, but she has like a crazy aesthetic and she does do random slutty shit. So I understand that you don't want your daughters exposed to this. I do understand that. But can you, since you don't have freedom of speech and freedom of expression in the classic American sense, can you use what would you call it? Like, not degeneracy. It's not libel either. There's something else. It's not blasphemy. It's like decency. Can you use decency laws in order to prohibit Sabrina Carpenter's content from hitting the Islamic Republic of Iran? And I think the answer is yes. Possum Nation says, Connor, I still use my Kirby vacuum that was made in 1978. The thing is an absolute beast. Dude, that's such a random reference. I don't know if you like watched a VOD where I talked about how I sold Kirby vacuums, but unironically, I love Kirby vacuums. They're $2,000 vacuums. They're way too expensive, but they are so good. They're made out of like steel and shit. I fucking love them. DD22E says, they want democracy. This is being forced on them, but they have to overthrow the regime themselves. Agreed. I don't want to spend all the blood and treasure in order to have an Iranian regime change war. But if the Iranians took to the streets and protested their theocratic government and ultimately threw them out of power and then created something that was more in line with their population, I would give no fucks. I would think that was based, actually. J Afro J says, Hezbollah have been grinded down to a nub. I think that's why they have been so quiet. So don't believe they will be a factor for a while. Yeah, it's like a hydra. You know, you chop off the head and two grow back, but it takes some time for them to grow. Last Stand 456 says, isn't Nick just explaining why he should attack Iran? Yeah, he keeps like descriptively being accurate and then at the last second being like, hey, democracy is bad. Vlad the Kebabber, he's saying it's bad for us to get into another war. Sure, I agree. We shouldn't be in another war. But Iran shouldn't have a nuke. And they should serve their constituency so they don't have to worry about a revolution because they have the consent of the governed. His issue is with U.S. involvement. Okay, we disagree. I'm a neocon. I'm a liberal conservative. I think that republicanism and liberalism are universal human goods, and they should be spread through soft and hard power as maximally as possible so the world can be awesome. Sorry, last comment, then we'll get back into the content. Christian Blair says, again, the GWAT is not just the Middle East. It accuses, it's across Africa and in those nations that counterterrorism helped defeat Boko Haram and ISIS affiliates. Yup. Anyways.
So when Netanyahu said that, he was trying to poison pill the talks. The talks were announced, and hours later, Netanyahu went on TV and...
Justin says Connor is so naive about geopolitics. Well, sorry, you just triggered another 2-minute rant, okay? I was born in the late 80s. When I was 2 or 3 years old, the Berlin Wall fell. I was raised by Reaganite conservatives who told me all about World War II and the Cold War. Both of my grandparents were World War II veterans, and I grew up listening to them, or at least people talk about them because they had PTSD like a motherfucker. But I listened to people talk about what they did in World War II. My uncle is a ranger who fought in the infantry. I was a huge history nerd and tech nerd my entire life. So pretty much since the age of 5, I've been reading about military technology and I've been reading about history. A third of my degree is in history. I think I have like 18 or like 21 credits in history. I read history books for fun. You know, not really anymore. I don't have enough time, but I probably have a dozen, maybe 24 college level books that I've read related to like history and geopolitics. I've read Robert Kaplan, who's one of the most great geopolitical minds of the past like 2 or 3 decades. So no, I'm not naive about this shit at all. And then on top of that, I served in the Marine Corps. I went to Japan. I went to Iraq. I went to Kuwait. I served in law enforcement. I've seen violence up close. I know what dead people look like. I know what violence does to families and communities. So, Justin, I put up my experience next to Nick the fucking Knife Fuentes, a racist Mexican who hates non-whites, who was raised in Chicago by probably racist parents, moved to Florida for 2 years and then moved back to Chicago. And he spent a decade wearing a suit, ranting into a webcam with a green screen behind him. I'll put my level of experience against Nick the fucking Knife Fuentes every goddamn day of the week. What the fuck are you talking about? I'm not naive about shit. So, love you, but fuck you too.
Said, yeah, the talks are great. They're going to end in Iran being destroyed and blown up. And ever since then, they have been making moves like this to derail diplomacy, saying that even if there is a deal, they will bomb Iran. Saying that whether it's a good deal or a bad deal, they'll bomb Iran. Saying,
Justin, a single guy setting himself on fire is not the cause of a mass democratic movement. It is the catalyst. The situation on the ground, having corrupt autocratic regimes in the Middle East and North Africa for decades, is the situation that led to the Arab awakening. This is just descriptively true.
the only acceptable deal is blowing up Iran. They've been trying to sabotage the deal. Nevertheless, Steve Witkoff, Trump's envoy, has been meeting with Iran almost every week. They've had 5 rounds of negotiations. But the problem inherent in the negotiations is this. Although both sides want to avert war, there is a legitimate impasse at the center of the negotiations, which is that the Trump administration is demanding that Iran get rid of its entire civilian nuclear program, which would render Iran defenseless. And Iran says, we want to keep our nuclear program so we can defend ourselves.
Okay. Let's watch. I'm good. I get the vibes. Again, this goes out there. Somebody says like, oh, Nick wouldn't talk to you because you need to be clouded up. Number one, pussy, right? I'm not saying that he's saying that. I'm saying what a pussy fucking perspective. Stephen Bennell, the sex gremlin that you guys talk shit about constantly, will have any random fucking schizo on for a fucking debate. And you got the leader of the dissident right, incapable, like socially isolated. Nobody will fucking talk to him except for Alex Jones and Elijah Schaffer. And he's bitching and moaning that he doesn't have enough people to fucking talk to. But he won't talk to anybody who's not clouded up enough. What a pussy fucking move. And then Saeed Hajut says, you would not find anything like it. There was a mistranslation with Ahmadinejad president that said he would wipe out Israel. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. Iran threatens to nuke Israel. That's the most... Israel and Iran trade strikes on 5th day of content. You know what? I'm not really going to presume you're correct. I'm assuming that I could do more research, but I think my Google searches around Iranian threats to Israel are all going to be colored by the conflict in the past 72 hours. And so I don't want to read through 20 pages of Israel and Iran threatening each other. I would rather just I would rather just say that I think it's there, but I don't know for a fact, and I'll find it later. So you can hold me to that at a later time. Somebody suggested Tank Alelic over the Gulf War air campaign is 2 minutes and 20 seconds, and it's basically a animation of the Gulf War air campaign. I'm going to watch this real quick, and then we'll wrap up the segment, and then I'll take your questions, and then we're pretty much hitting 5 hours, so I'm probably going to dip out after that. But I parasocially love, quick shill before anybody leaves. Like the stream, that way it pops up in the algorithm. Engage with chat. There's literally dozens upon dozens. We're up to 150 people, I think was our peak. And I think we bounced between 130 and 150 almost all day. And yeah, we got some schizophrenics, but we also got some really smart, funny people in chat. So I would say engage with chat. Comment on the VODs. Watch the VODs if you miss a stream. Super chats are appreciated, but never required. We had 21 different people. Well, not different people. We had 21 people donate today. Sapient. It scrolls too fast. Give me a second. Let me see if I can make this bigger. Sapient. Rugdug again. Grassroots. Vokes. Grassroots. Rugdug. Justin. Silver Jacket Man. Audacity. Grassroots again. Silver Jacket Man again. J Afro J. Grassroots with a huge one. Rugdug, and then Grassroots again. Nick, pick up your phone. Exactly. But seriously, guys, thank you so much. Obviously, Grassroots is always the financial star of the program because he oils. He's a good dude. He's very supportive of the channel. But honestly, thank you, Rugdug and Audacity and Sapient and Vokes and the new members and Silver Jacket Man and Afro J. Thank you, man. Seriously, thank you. All right. Anyways, let's watch this animation and then I'll answer some chats and then we'll wrap up. Holy shit. I'm actually going to pause this. If you don't know what you're looking at a massive aerial campaign that effectively made the Iraq army obsolete within a few hours. Took out their anti-air missile silos, took out their radar, took out their airplanes, took out everything before they even had a chance to blink, and then left their entire army vulnerable to American air power. Just an absolutely insane military campaign. These are F-117 Nighthawks, which are like very early stealth bombers that were capable of just absolutely annihilating the Iraqi Air Force while it was still on the ground. Taking out the studs and the armor. That was a cluster bombing. I actually watched a documentary on this one exclusively. British Tornadoes, which are fighters, but they're like ground to air fighters or whatever. They took out multiple Iraqi air bases by raining cluster munitions on the airstrip. And what that does is not only does it destroy anything it touches, where like if a cluster munition smacks into the side of a fucking jet, it's obviously going to fuck it up. But if a cluster munition hits the ground and blows up the concrete, it makes it so you can't take off from the airstrip without massively damaging your vehicles and potentially crashing before you even take off. Absolutely insane technology. And ladies and gentlemen, that's why I love the American military-industrial complex, because anybody who saw, when you're participating in any level of these operations, it's a total clusterfuck. Nobody knows what they're doing. They don't know their butt from their elbow. But effectively, when you look at it in a macro scale, it's actually wildly impressive what the United States military is capable of. 07s, my family is home. I'm going to go get a Frosty. But parasocial love to you and yours. Have a great day. Bum, bum, bum.